They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You flatter someone by copying them. But one could also say, with slight modification, that immigration is the sincerest form of flattery. You show that a place is attractive, and you show that it's got policies that work by moving there. You vote with your feet. Now, when we think about test cases of capitalism and socialism, we often look on the international stage. We look, for example, historically at North Korea versus South Korea. North Korea socialist, South Korea capitalist. Which one works better? Which country are people trying to move out of and move to? Or in the old Soviet times, East Germany versus West Germany. East Germany socialist, a disaster, the Berlin Wall to keep people in, and West Germany capitalist, flourishing, doing much better. But this comparison of places that are better or worse can even be applied inside the United States. And so we've got blue states that are governed according to blue democratic leftist policies. And we've got red states governed according to more conservative principles. And it's kind of a good question as to who's leaving what type of regime and moving where. Well, the answer to that question is in. There is a massive migration underway. Here's a new study, and it's actually done remarkably by a trucking company, United Van Lines, which obviously has an interest in who's moving and why and to where. Well, according to the study, Americans are fleeing states like New York and California for places like Texas and Florida. And this is a trend that has been going on now for a number of years. It is in no way stopped by COVID, in fact, accelerated in some respect. And by the way, it isn't just that Californians are moving to Texas and New Yorkers are moving to Florida. It is also the case that other blue states are suffering a hemorrhage, places like Pennsylvania and Michigan and New Jersey and Washington State. And there are other red states that are also gaining people. These are states like Arizona and Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. In fact, here are the top 5 inbound states for last year: Idaho, Arizona, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. Wow, all of them red states. Now, the question is, why is this happening? The economist Friedrich Hayek many years ago talked about a framework of competing utopias. And what he meant is that, when you have a lot of different experiments in socialism and capitalism, people can sort of see what works. They can look over their shoulder. And it turns out people are exiting the blue states and moving to the red states. Now, some people might think, well, that's obvious. That's just due to the weather. It's so much nicer, Dinesh, in Florida than it is, for example, in New York, which can be frigid for parts of the year. But this explanation doesn't really work. Why? Well, how can it explain people leaving sunny California and moving to Texas, whose landscape is a lot more questionable, whose weather is a lot more dubious, as I can testify as someone who moved from California to Texas. So the weather doesn't provide an adequate explanation, nor is it, by the way, adequate to say, well, people are moving out of cities and they're moving more to suburban and rural communities. No, that's not really true either. Why? Because red cities are doing well. People are moving to cities like Phoenix and Houston and Dallas and Atlanta and Denver. Now, not all those cities are bright red, but they are governed by red state policies for the most part. And so the trend, again, is not away from cities, but it's away from a certain type of city, Chicago, Baltimore, New York City, and toward a little different type of a city. Now, why is this occurring? Well, one reason, taxes. taxes in the red states are lower. We're talking obviously about state taxes. So we're paying federal taxes anyway, but why would you want to pay another 9 or 10% on top of that and live in California when you can pay 0% and live in Texas or in Florida? So taxes, not just income tax, state income taxes, but also property taxes are relevant. Florida's property taxes, for example, are low, and New Jersey's are very high. So that's one reason why people move from New Jersey to Florida. The second reason, cost of living. You walk into a grocery store in California and your bill is $120. You go buy the same stuff at a grocery store in Texas and your bill is $55. It's a noticeable difference, not just for food and groceries, but also for gas. Gas prices have gone up everywhere, but they're still much lower in places like Texas. Another factor, jobs. Much easier to find a job in the red states. Why? Because there are entrepreneurially friendly policies. And by the way, this applies to working class jobs. If you want to work on a fracking rig, it's easier to do it in a red state. But it also applies to high-tech jobs. And what's happened is California has been losing a number of the big high-tech companies. Elon Musk relocated to Texas recently. But he wasn't the only one. The software giant Oracle has unveiled plans to get out of Redwood City, California, to move to Austin. Charles Schwab moved from San Francisco to Denton, Texas. And these are not the only examples at all. So jobs. What about crime? We've seen a festering surge in crime, not just in cities, but in blue cities. And who wants to live under the looming threat of being mugged or robbed or attacked or even just kind of molested in normal life? I'm talking about the fact that you're eating in a restaurant in San Francisco and some homeless guy comes up and starts hassling you or yelling at you or spitting in your food or picks a chicken wing off your plate. This is not the kind of life people want to live. And this is what blue states not only tolerate, but to some degree encourage. They build the tent encampments for the homeless guys to basically be right across from, a nice Italian restaurant where they can basically go and hassle not only the staff, but also people living there. And finally, I would say more broadly, just freedom, because the blue states have shown a certain kind of cynical appetite for tyranny that has somewhat come out of COVID. This idea that, we're just going to not only lock you down, we're going to tell you what to do. We're going to establish all kinds of regulations. If you want to live, you've got to live in this regimented way according to our kind of code. And if you don't do it, we're going to, if not fine you or harass you, we'll at least ostracize you. Oh, that guy's not wearing a mask. Let me call him in. Let me report him. This is life in the blue states. And not surprisingly, it's unlivable for a lot of people. Now, true, some people like the regimented life. And these are people who go into the army. And they want that, but that's not what most people want. Most people want to live their own life. They want to be the architect of their own destiny. They want to choose the food that they eat. They want to choose the people that they socialize with. If they want to go to church, they want to be able to go to church on Sunday. And the left has been clamping down in subtle ways on all of this. So, as a result, people go at some point, and think of it, it's not easy to pick up and leave. It's going to take a lot to make someone do that. And there are some people, all kinds of conservatives, for example, who are prisoners in the blue states because they can't leave. Their job is there. They've got kids already in school. So I sympathize with people who are trapped in societies that have horrific policies that they have to endure. So think of all the people who, if they could leave, would pack up and leave. California it's still the most beautiful state in the country, but despite its beauty, life over there is becoming increasingly unlivable. And as a result, people are basically deciding, let's pick up the tent if we can. Let's move to some place where the sun may not shine as brightly, but my life prospects are a lot sunnier.